Okay. Great. Welcome everyone to the Ideate webinar, our second touch base with the 2022 Jacobs Teen Innovation Challenge. As a reminder, I'm Monty Kalish, here tonight with my colleagues, Bianca and Lynn. We are here to, hopefully support you, answer any questions you have, and engage with everyone. So feel free to say hi to each other and us in the chat. And then throughout tonight's, I say tonight because it's tonight for us, but I recognize that for some of you it's not tonight, and some of you might be early tomorrow morning. So we appreciate those of you who are able to join us live. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. I'm just going to recap a couple of things that we talked about last time, for those of you who are able to make it live. So just a reminder on the timeline. Tonight we're at the Ideate webinar. We're going to continue to have these ongoing webinars for you. Hopefully you're able to join us, but for you throughout the process. And again, this is a chance not only for you to connect with us and hear from us, but also really for you to connect and engage with each other. And frankly, we have learned over the course of time that that's really where some of the power is when you have a chance to talk with each other and share your experiences. So we hope that you're willing to do that again. We are leading up our efforts ultimately to the April 30th submission deadline. So that feels like a little while a ways away, which is totally fine. But the objective here is that you can work with your students in any sort of timeline or capacity that works best for your situation. I actually know some of you, I'm not sure about who's here tonight, but I know some of you have not yet started with students because you don't even get them yet for another week or two or three, and that's totally fine. Like I said last time, others have been working on this challenge really going back to the fall because they had an opportunity to start working with students on an ongoing basis. It's totally fine. From our perspective, the only real deadline that we have is the April 30th submission deadline. So as we continue down this path, you can work with students in whatever time frame works best for you. But ultimately, it leads up to the pitch submission deadline for us, which is April 30th. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the timeline or the expectations on that front? Because I know, especially for new folks, sometimes that's a little confusing. You feel free to come off mute or go into the chat. I'm seeing a couple head shakes, so I won't belabor this issue, but that is the important point. If you do, feel free to make sure we're clarifying these things. You can work with students however works best for you, leading up to April 30th. So, I also want to kind of take a moment because I do think that this is, not the ultimate objective here, our prizes, but I think that this is a nice little carrot and opportunity. And we actually had some great. Lynn in particular helped us last year identify a whole list of charities which are available on our website, who can ultimately, if your student teams do win, then you and they have an opportunity to designate a charity to receive their prize money on their behalf. And that's been a great connection, kind of helps ties in the SDGs and community service and the social good element. And frankly, we hope that over time there'll be future opportunities for student teams who potentially may be able to engage further with those charities. So these are our official prizes. We offer prizes for the winning teams, and then we donate those prizes on their behalf to charity. But I will say this year we also have an exciting sponsored prize from DRS Daylight Solutions. And so I mention it again to help encourage you and your students to think about if they happen to be interested in or thinking about, and again, it may be too soon because we've only done the understand phase and we're just starting to maybe talk about ideation. They may not have figured out exactly what they're going to do, which is totally fine. But as they navigate this plan, if there's an opportunity for them to choose a solution that aligns with, the field of photonics, then there's an additional prize that could be made available to those students. And so that's from our sponsor. And I will point out here, I highlighted on the screen, we have additional clarification, which came to us this week. Somebody asked us a question and said, hey, is solar considered to be in the field of photonics? And the answer from our sponsor was, because I wasn't certain myself, the answer was yes, absolutely. And so I put that on the list, and hopefully just to start thinking, there's lots of ways to potentially look at photonics and in the work that students are doing. And so no pressure, but if they think about that, and I will say because of the two prize levels, there's the possibility that a student team who may have done something photonics could win one of our prizes and also the photonics prize. So, or depending on how it plays out, they will use the same rubric for these prizes. We'll just have to find out who's like done something in this field, and then that makes them eligible for the photonics prize. Ms. Barnes, yes, all the slides of the recording and slides will be sent out. They're also linked, not yet because we're in the process, but they're also will be linked on the webpage for the Teen Innovation Challenge. So if you just go to packville.org, click on that big banner, all the way at the bottom, you'll find all the links to things. So in case you lose it or can't find my emails or whatever, that's the best way to go about it. So that's the piece about the Photonics Award. I remind you to think about that. Again, new opportunities, so hopefully we'll get some interest from there. Lynn made a comment, and I'm actually going to go ahead and share the link. Let me find it really fast. It's too early to worry about this yet, but to Lynn's point, we do have a list of charities that she collected and made available. They are aligned to the global goals. When it comes time ultimately to make a decision, if your teams win, if you see a charity that's not on that list that we think that we should add, that would be great if we could do so in advance. We had some teams who ultimately, even after they won, went ahead and selected another charity, and as long as we could vet them and make sure that they were, there's a couple rules that we have to follow for the university, but if we could just make sure that they were a valid 501(c) kind of organization in the US from a tax perspective, we needed to do that. We've got some international charities too who usually have a presence in the US and have that characteristic, and that's totally fine. So we're open to other suggestions and ideas if you have them. All right. So I'd love to just sort of find out how things are going from those of you who are here, and then kind of take it from there. So I did want to, while you're taking a chance of looking at that poll, I wanted to kind of recap some of the prior next steps from the last webinar, which we encouraged you to create your teacher account in Class Impactful. I think most of you have done that now. I've emailed a few who had not yet done so. Invite students. Ideally introduce yourself to the Impactful community. There is a link at the top of every page to the community itself. If you were interested in the virtual exchange program, which Bianca is taking the lead on organizing, we asked you to complete that interest form. That's already happened. She's going to talk about it a little bit more later. We've actually taken those interests and tried to pair people, and I know some of you have actually made some connections with your new education partner, which is fantastic. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then I hope, ideally you started working on the understand phase. So I'm going to look at the poll results, which is, I've got 22% of the people things are going great, which is what we like to hear. And then 22% have some questions, which is also why we're here, and the okay so far. So I'd love to hear, any thoughts or comments you may have about, feel free to come off mute. Like, what does that mean for you? Like, what's okay? What are you hoping to get out of tonight's experience? That sort of thing, if you feel comfortable sharing.
You can also share in the chat box too, so that's an option.
I'm sorry, did we say we were sharing questions?
Yeah, just any thoughts about, for some people said that things are only going okay so far, so I'm trying to figure out, whether that's just, hey, this is my first time and I'm still learning and we're working through it, and that's totally fine, or if there's something that we can specifically help clarify or help you with.
The last time we met, I was in a very bad internet area, so some things blocked out, and we're kind of on the step where we need to figure out what to do within our Pactful page. And so I'll have some questions about that stuff. That's where I got lost.
No problem. And I will just, as I said before, our team is here to help you throughout. If you have specific questions or comments, feel free to either send us an email or post on the Pactful community. We will make time if we need to come in and have a session with you or your and help kind of guide you throughout whatever you might need to be successful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Andrea also mentioned that there's a recording for the first session, so make sure you go back. If you need the link, just email us. And we do have some comments or questions in the chat, Money. So Jessica
How to
said,
assign steps. Students are in their hands, but that's as far as I've gotten. Jessica, can you explain that your comment a little bit more? I'm not
Sorry,
quite.
I'm on a cell phone, and so I was trying to like text to talk as I'm driving. Students are in their groups, and like I have my homepage. They've created their groups and they've aligned their mission to those groups. But that's like as far as I've gotten. I feel like we're supposed to be assigning steps, or I'm supposed to be able to grade stuff, but their page looks exactly like mine, and I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how it's supposed to be different.
Understood. So the big key characteristic, Jessica, is that once a student, single or multiple, they create a project in Pactful and they can invite other students or add other students to their team. Once the project exists, then you can click on that project card and you'll be taken to the screen that has the design thinking phases, understand, ideate, prototype, and pitch. And you can click on that understand phase in order to get to the curricular content on the left-hand side. So I can show you that very quickly. Let me just do that. So once a project exists, it'll be on their page and on yours. You can click on it, and then you get to these design thinking phases, and that's the key navigation for the next piece. So the understand phase has these 3 steps. Actually, all the phases do. Explore, do, and document. The explore is some light curricular content, and then the meat of the activities, or the bulk of the learning, presumably happens with the activities that are on this do step. And so they, we keep this open-ended intentionally within Pactful. You as the educator may decide that you're telling them, hey, I want you to go complete activity 1 and 5 and 3 or whatever. But that's completely up to you and how you do it. Otherwise, we leave it open to student choice and voice and let them kind of pick the activities that they think might be the most interesting and best. When they're done, they will link their files on the document step and then send them using the submit files button to you. And that's your opportunity and that's your mechanism. And you'll see that on your dashboard. Oh, I've got something that's ready for review from the student team. And so you can click on it, review those documents, and see how they're doing, and either approve the phase completely or return it and encourage them to do either more or something else or something different. Does that help?
I'm trying to see, I guess I'm clicking and trying to follow along with you
Okay.
as we're going through this so that I'm in the same place. So I went into the do, I clicked on one and it says start it. And they give them a Google Doc to copy or to make a copy of. I don't see where they get to submit things. Is it because I'm a teacher that I'm only seeing the other side of theirs?
No, the submission happens on the documents.
Oh, document. Okay, I missed that step. I'm sorry.
The activities themselves happen. We introduce the activities, including templates and whatnot, and encourage them. Like they have this research portfolio template. They can click on this, make a copy of it for their own purposes, right? Because this is our version, they can't type into it. They won't, I can type into it because I have permission, but they and you would not. They'll need to make a copy if that's the activity they want to do, and then they and their team can work on it. When they're ready, they can go back to the document step and link just that document. They might link many different files, depending on which activities they ended up completing. There's no direct tie between the specific activities they're completing and the documents they use for submission. And the reason for that is because we have educators who also sometimes tell them, hey, I want you to do that first activity, but I also want you to do X, Y, Z, or I want you to modify it in a way or do something else. And so we've kept it intentionally a little bit loose So that might be why there was that connection missing. So the real piece, they link their files that they want to contribute, to get feedback on, or that they think are the collection of work that completes the phase from their perspective, and then they send it to their teacher or teachers using this button. So we kind of addressed this a little bit, but I want to kind of just ask where folks are generally in the sort of overall, I say process, but in the challenge event itself, like where you are. So it sounds like some of you, look, that's great. I already see at least one who my students have formed teams and they've picked a goal and they're working on the understand phase. That's fantastic. Others are just getting started, which is also great. And again, I knew some people they haven't even seen students yet. So I'm presuming that's the reason for that. Let me look at the other questions, comments here. Abraham, we are in IB school in terms of, so kind of used to the cycle in terms of documentation, great. Waiting for semester to start next week to recruit students, also great. Celine, we are in the virtual exchange where students have different goals and projects. Do we have to come up with one in common, or both schools can work on their own project? I'm going to let Bianca table that and answer that question a little bit later when we're talking about the virtual exchange. We'll definitely address that issue with the virtual exchange piece. And Abraham, is it possible to have two teams? Yeah. Depending on how many students you have, I presume most of you, not all, because some of you only have a few, most of you will have multiple student teams working on multiple projects. It's even possible to have a student who is on multiple projects, maybe working on multiple. We anticipate, we know sometimes because innovation is messy and the way it works, sometimes students join a team and then they decide that they don't want to be on it anymore or change. That's all completely fine and supported within Impactful. Is it possible to have one student in a team? The answer is yes, it is. However, I will make the caveat, we would highly encourage you, if it is at all possible, to try to have students at least in a pair, if not, a trio or something, only because we think our experience from this work and from here working with other educators over the past 3 years, we know that the experience is a little bit better for students working in a team, because then they can sort of play off of each other's strengths and skills and work on something together. So we would encourage you to think about putting students into teams of more than one student if you can. So we think that the sweet spot is 3 to 4. I've seen some great pairs that do some amazing work, so that's totally fine. For those of you who are in the last section of saying, I'll be inviting students into Impactful soon, is there anything that you need from us to help you with that? Or is that just a reality of where you are in your program, your implementation?
I'll speak up, Ian. For me, it's just where I am in my implementation. So we're trying to work this into our honors program curriculum, which is a capstone curriculum. So, it's all a process, but yeah. So I would anticipate though that we'll have, teams formed within the next, week or so, but they'll kind of stagger in.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a fine answer, but I will just leave this with anyone. As we said before, if you're struggling or having problems, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll do what we can to help you. Obviously, you have these touch-base moments that are scheduled, but if there's something in the meantime, let us know and we'll get you sorted out. So tonight, go ahead. Did somebody?
Yeah, Moni, no, I just want to remind them that what you mentioned earlier, that it's okay to go back to the webinars, rewatch them. It's a learning process for you if you're doing Impactful for the first time. So it's okay to go like 2 weeks before or earlier, rewatch the video. So just know that that's the process of designing a project, and sometimes there's some time waiting. So it's okay. Don't worry if you're not.
That's a great point, Bianca. Thank you. And I actually have a tip on that, which is you can do it a little bit faster. If you're using YouTube, you can use keyboard shortcuts. The greater than and less than symbols on your keyboard allow you to speed up the speaker and or slow them down. That can be really helpful if you're trying to watch a recorded webinar and you don't want to wait for, all the normal pauses and slowness and that kind of thing. Hit the greater than sign a few times and it'll go really fast, probably too fast to me. So there's a tip. So tonight we're going to dive into the ideate phase. So within the ideate phase, which is the next phase after the understand, which we talked about last time, students will extend their learning from the understand phase and to start clearly stating the problem they're trying to solve and brainstorm solutions. So the goal of the ideate phase is to create as many original and unique ideas and then ultimately narrow it down into the best one that the team likes in preparation for modeling and designing in the prototype phase, which comes next. I'm going to play our little video, which also appears on the explore step of the understand phase.
Now that you understand the problem, it's time to ideate and come up with solutions. At first, you might be overflowing with ideas, or you might have trouble coming up with ideas. The first step of ideating is to stop, catch your breath, and clearly frame the problem into an actionable question. For example, how might we provide flood victims clean drinking water in order to prevent illness? This question will guide your project so you're all working toward one goal. Next, you'll go broad and brainstorm many solutions, tapping into your creative confidence to boldly share all your ideas. Even if you think some are bad, all ideas are valuable and have the potential to spark new thoughts and solutions. To get to one great idea, you need to start with a lot of them. Once your team has lots of ideas, you'll go narrow and pick the best ones based on their innovativeness, usefulness, and your team's skills and resources. Picking the best ideas can be tricky since you might disagree. It's okay. Disagreements are normal in teams. You can work through them by talking until you reach a compromise. Your best ideas will emerge when you're sharing thoughts and working together to create a solution for your question. It takes teamwork to make the world a better place.
So that's a little introduction to the ideate phase. Again, as I said before, the understand has helped to, help students start to connect their problem to actual people and how it impacts them and what, it feels like. And then this phase is really to take it and start thinking about potential ideas and coming up with one and then ultimately selecting one of them. And so that's what you'll find in the activities. Bianca.
Thank you, Moni. So now that students have completed the understand phase where they had an opportunity to spend time analyzing the problem that they want to solve and potentially interviewing people who are being affected by the problem, we're now going to move into the ideation phase. The activities in the ideation phase provide students with the tools and resources that they need to brainstorm ideas and discover a possible solution. Within this phase, we have the activities divided into 3 different categories: frame the problem, go broad, and go narrow. Let's take a closer look at each category. Impactful, remember that we encourage students, teams to complete one activity in each of the activity groups, but you can guide them differently depending on your classroom needs. First, we have framing the problem. In this category, you will find an activity that helps students frame the question to their problem, which ultimately determines the kind of solutions they'll come up with later. So it's essential that students do not rush through the ideation phase. Next, we have the go broad category, where you will find activities that allow students to freely brainstorm and share their ideas with their teammates. And lastly, we have the go narrow category. Here you will find activities that help students discover their ideas with their teammates and start narrowing their focus. They will also evaluate whether an idea will be a good one, as well as considering whether the idea is feasible. Using these resources and activities, we want students to work toward brainstorming ideas for their prototype. So as you can see on the screen, those are the 3 different subcategory sections. And as you have seen how Pathful works, you can go into each category and find different activities within that phase. So if anybody has any questions about this Ideate phase, you can unmute yourselves and ask them, or if somebody maybe has started already with an idea, feel free to share the idea that your students have, or share in the chat box too.
I will make a comment. I do think that this worst possible idea is such a great fun activity with students, because they can really explore without the reins of having to worry, like coming up with the most terrible. And it's a surprising how an activity like that can really help them ultimately be successful in picking which ideas are even better and why. So there's some great opportunities here through this process.
Yeah, and I would also add the framing the problem activity. Sometimes we rush through coming up with an idea, and sometimes students need time to process, understand the context of the problem that you're trying to solve. So this activity helps you kind of step back and rationalize what you're gonna do first.
And I will also comment to say, in Pathful, our official recommendation is that students do 1 activity in each of those groups. But again, as I said before, you might, in the interest of time and other things or direction, you may choose 1 or 2 or something that you want them to do instead of our suggestion, and that's totally fine. They can do them all, but that's probably a tall order.
Yeah, and as always, feel free to modify the activities. They're a template to be used, so feel free to take things out, make them shorter, make them longer. I don't think we have any questions for this slide.
Before we move, yeah, we'll come back. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over some updates for the virtual exchange pilot. Thank you so much for those who sign up and are enrolling that program. If anybody's interested and still is thinking about it, feel free to email me. It's never late here in Pathful to do anything. So feel free to email me if you're interested at all in participating. So now educators have been matched with their virtual exchange partner by now. You should know who you are working with. Also, we strongly encourage you to find the best time to meet virtually with your partner. I know that can be challenging depending on the time zone and your working schedule. If you're having any trouble with that, also you can also email me and I can work with you in coming up with ideas of how you can go around that. But please try your best to connect with your partner teacher at least once. And we're going to be providing other activities that can be done asynchronous. So don't worry about making all the activities live. Most of them can be done asynchronous. And again, all the activities and guiding activities that we provide, feel free to modify them as you see the need. Also, please remember to share your experience in the Pathful community. We'll share the slides where you can hyperlink. We have a hyperlink, the link where you can share about your experience and who are you meeting, the students, the teacher, the subjects, anything that you want to share there with us. Lastly, just to mention that new guided activities are going to be added this week. So feel free to do those as time allows. And let me go back to answer the question that we had from Selena, and then we can answer any other questions that you have related to the virtual exchange experience also. So I know, Selena, you were asking about working on the same project. You're working on a different project as your partner teacher, and I think that's the greatest asset of this virtual experience, right? That you get to see how another educator is implementing the program and what challenges they're facing, and gathering ideas from them. So it's perfect that you're both working on different projects. if you see an alignment, feel free to connect and start working on a project together. I think that would be an amazing experience to see how maybe projects are able to come in alignment and maybe work with somebody else. Selena, do you want to share a little bit more about your experience so far? I think it would be nice to hear.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we had a virtual meeting yesterday with teacher Jessica, and my students were there, and we are meeting her students next Monday. And we were talking that, well, my students are working on a different goal from theirs, and we were just trying to figure out how to, I don't know, mix the projects. But with what you said, well, I think we're just going to be giving each other feedback, because their her students are working on the mental health, and mine are doing something totally different. But we liked some of the things that she is doing, and we're going to apply them for our project. So we're trying to make this work as best as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Selena. And I like how you're describing how you approach the meeting experience. I think you met her first, Jessica, and then next week you're gonna meet the students. That's amazing. And that's what we mean when we say the guiding activities are flexible. This is a pilot program for us. So hearing your experience that you're going through, it's amazing to hear that. And I would also just restate what I mentioned earlier, that even if you're working in different projects, you're going through the same methodology and processes and trying to understand and learn how to implement them. So that's great that if you can even share that similarity, that would be amazing. And coming guiding activities, actually, Selena, we have activity 2 and 3 that we'll be posting soon. And one of them is asking you to create a virtual board where you're sharing each other's current update with the project. So it's amazing to see that you're already thinking of these ideas, because they align with the guiding activities that we're going to provide. Moni, if there's anything that you want to also add, maybe here.
No, I appreciate you sharing your experience, Celine. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I apologize. Selena?
Celine or Selene?
Okay. And this is a pilot, so we're trying to learn too. We had toyed with varying different ideas, like how to pair people and whether they would choose the same project or goal. And frankly, that gets a little unwieldy for us, and you're kind of experiencing this too. We were kind of hopeful, and we've heard already that some of this is happening, to your point, where it becomes a little bit more organic and it kind of evolves together, where you figure out the best way to kind of take advantage of, you know, somebody else's voice and place in the world. And that's what we hope is the opportunity for students to hear from somebody else who doesn't live where they live. And whether it's the exact same project or not, your whole idea about maybe ultimately you have 2 student teams from different parts of the world, and they get paired together to help each other with their own projects, even if they're different projects, but just to help each other think about things differently, or maybe give a different lens of information as it applies in their community versus, you know, somewhere else. So, you know, we're learning too, and as we go through this, we're hoping that, you know, we get the benefit of everyone's experience and get to be able to make this program even better going forward. So, you know, we know it's new, and we're trying some new things here.
Yeah. Does anybody want to join or share their experience, or has any other comments?
Okay, there'll be some more time here shortly to open it up to the floor for everyone. But Bianca has taken the point on coordinating the activities here. I think we've got everybody paired and communicating. Got a couple of logistical issues that she's trying to help sort out, with a few folks who are like, I can't find time to meet. But overall, I think we've got some good pairings and some good energy around this, and so it's exciting. With that, I'm going to remind everyone, I see that Justin, Mr. Breton, has just rejoined us. I gotta say, I think Justin's the king of Twitter sharing, which I just love. Get a nice opportunity to see some of the work that's happening underway with their students. We would encourage you and or your students to share any of their thoughts or progress online too, using the hashtag JTIC22. Not a requirement, because I know, some situations it doesn't work out well. Others, it's great. We do think that this whole storytelling piece is an integral part of what we believe is important. Obviously, it ties directly into the pitch phase when we get there, but the storytelling element throughout the process, there is that mechanism that we think is ultimately very important. Helping students share their work online and getting energy around that with others is the idea here. And we're going to be giving awards away to those who randomly, to those who are sharing online, sharing their progress, whether you're sharing on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the social is. We're actually not on TikTok. But if you'll use the hashtag JTIC22, there'll be an opportunity. And plus, that gives you an opportunity to see some of the work and some of the efforts that are being shared. We've got some initial shares already from, as I mentioned, Amy Sylvester just shared that she was working with students. Justin shared a few things already with some folks. If you've shared something and we missed it, I am sorry. Please let us know. We don't want to miss those. I think we've gotten them all. But I also know it's early, it's early days. But I do think it helps throughout the process to kind of share with the world broadly if you and or students, and sometimes students themselves are the ones who make those shares, and that's okay too.
I also want to add maybe on this slide that documenting everything is so important, and that's a skill that I learned through my career. So if you start teaching students how to do that, documenting their work and sharing their work, I think here Justin did an amazing job of taking photos of the papers where the students were working on. And that's a great example of what you can also do. You can take, it doesn't necessarily have to be photos of the students. It can be like students' work, them working on the computers, or just the screens of the computers, your display of the screen, and just hashtag GTIC 2022. So we can all share that. But I think mentioning that the importance of documenting your process is really good.
I'm going to stop sharing slides because that's the end of the official slides, but this is hopefully now an open floor opportunity to chat about how things are going, how we can help, how you can help each other, maybe thoughts about your experience. For those of you who are new, maybe any thoughts about your experience so far or advice for others that would be coming on board, or what you've already learned?
That's a great idea.
I have a quick question. So my students started, so last year they worked on a Samsung Solve for Tomorrow project, and we got to the semifinals of that. And so that was like our project for the year, which is pretty cool. But this year we didn't make it to the semifinals. So they wanted to work on something, but I guess they also decided they weren't as jazzed about the idea as they kind of thought they would be. So then we found this and they were like, this seems cool, let's do this. So, but they're actually thinking, I know you guys did teams of 3 and 4, but if they want to work as a group of like 5 to 6, and I know like we were working that way, is that okay for us to do that?
Yep. We have no actual rules around team size.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a matter of like what makes sense. Like if you have a team of 30, that's
right.
Absolutely, teams of 5 or 6 we've seen. Our recommendation is 3 to 4, but yeah, anything that kind of works well, especially if you're supporting and helping them. We don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a club at my school because we're on a semester system, and so I can never tie it to class because the class ends right in the middle of these processes. So okay, cool.
And that kind of goes back to the earlier question, can have a team of 1? Yes, the answer is officially yes. It's just a matter, and kind of to your point, 6 is, maybe starts to border on too many, but it really depends on the 6 and how you're guiding them and what you're doing. So great question. Anyone else want to share your initial experience or any suggestions you want to share with anyone else? Or fears you might have? In the chat, in the video. Either way, doesn't matter. You don't have to, but I do think kind of to this point, I do think one of the advantages of the virtual exchange is also, in addition to just the virtual or just the exchange component, is the opportunity to be paired with another educator who may be going through the same experience. And sometimes that can be really powerful. And so, you know, and you're not alone. You have us and you have this group of folks, and we've got the Pac-12 community. There's lots of people who are, you know, willing to help and support you in any way that we can. So.
Hi, this is Shaila. I can't be on video, sorry. But we have had a great start. I have 6 students in my group. I'm not a educator, but I'm a coach.
That's an educator by our standards.
Yes, and we have distributed teams. I mean, we have some in the Eastern time zone, and we have one boy from Texas. So it's interesting to see how the kids are actually collaborating and working in these times, that leveraging technology and all that people have gotten used to with the pandemic and all that. What I've seen is all of them worked individually on their own mind maps, and then I saw them bring it all together. It is wonderful to see how these young minds work. And I've seen some beautiful whiteboards out there on the Twitter that you shared. If these students are going back home and working on those, I would suggest Bubble has been an easy one. I can put it in the chat. Probably everybody probably knows that, but that's been a good tool for the mind mapping and a few other kind of narrowing it down, just like you showed us in the ideation phase on how students need to arrive at something. So these tools, online tools, have really helped.
Thank you, Shaila. And I would also say, as I said before, like, we continue to make adjustments to the Pac-12 curriculum and app on an ongoing basis too. If there's ultimately an extra, you know, feel free to jump into the community and, you know, share a, you know, unique resource with others. And particularly if you think that, hey, and we just did this, if you say, hey, I've got this really great activity that I think you guys should add to the understand phase or the ideate or whatever, we are absolutely open to that as well and have done that in the past. So this is, you know, just like the projects and solutions they're working on, it's an iteration, and we continue to make updates and adjustments ourselves based on the expertise and feedback we get from everyone. So if you've got a tool or something that's working great, let us know, and maybe we'll be able to put it into the actual activities, or give people an extra opportunity to, you know, at least be aware of something. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone have maybe something surprising or some good experience they've had with students who've just gotten started with this that they didn't expect? Maybe it's too early, I don't know. Okay. I will stay here all night to chat with folks and help everyone, but I also don't want to unnecessarily keep folks. We're here to help. And I also know, and I just want to remind you, for those of you who are still, you know, not quite gotten service, that's totally fine. As you do, I would remind, we've had many, one of our most experienced educators, and I said this in the first one, and I think it's important to reiterate, one of our now most experienced Pac-12 educators originally had no connection to the SDGs or design thinking or Pac-12 or anything, and basically rolled up their sleeves and just learned and worked alongside students. And, you know, you may ultimately be in a situation where you have to measure student progress or grade them or do something, and that's, you know, in your own, I get that, I understand that too. But if you're not, then hopefully this is really exploratory and fun. The one piece I will reiterate from a timeline perspective is make sure that you consider the opportunity to sort of put time chunks in for each of the phases, so that not because you couldn't spend forever, but you also want to make sure that the benefit is getting through all the phases to some degree. So, you know, understand you could spend an entire semester or a year just, you know, looking at empathizing and understanding with users. We would encourage you to, at a certain point, cut that off, have them move forward. If they finish early and can go back, great. But one of the real key things is really getting to that prototype, an opportunity to build something digital or physical, or or a service. So it doesn't have to be a product, as we said, but really to make something, and then the storytelling piece with the pitch, bringing it all together. The culmination of all of those things is really where we see some of the power come. So think about that as you're working on your schedules and plans. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.